it is clear that we are not dealing with sane people. We are not dealing with people who give a rat's ass about anyone other than themselves, their greed, their control, power. And genocide. Let's talk divisive, shall we, Albanese? Let's talk divisive. Again, I just don't think some people know better. I think some people generally do not know better. Because they've never known their relevant and true history. They've never actually spoke to and dealt with people who were there at the time. I have. Not many people left who actually know first-hand stories from people carrying survivor's guilt. The look of survivor's guilt on someone's face is enough.
If Western governments are actively supporting a genocide, which is live streamed every day, after 2 years, it is hardly surprising that some highly disturbed individuals might react to that by doing something as disgusting and outrageous as the attack in Manchester. Main cause of anti-Semitism at the moment in the world today is the fact that the Israeli state claims to represent all Jews and is committing a genocide in Gaza in the name of all Jews. Israel has the Star of David on its tanks, on its planes, while it is killing women.
It's not the Star of David, there's no such thing. It's the Star of Saturn. It's the black cube.
And children in Gaza. It's stirring up anti-Semitism all the time. As the son of a Holocaust survivor, I do know something about anti-Semitism and I take it very, very seriously. I think it's so important that Jewish people speak out against what Israel is doing. Jews can be identified with the genocide. And this is something extremely disturbing and upsetting to me. And I don't think I'm the only person with a Jewish background who feels like that. To be part of a community which is identified as being perpetrators of a genocide is just the worst thing that could happen. And Jewish people across the world have to do all they can to oppose what Israel is doing, mostly to stop the killing in Gaza and elsewhere, but also to save Jews from the guilt and the shame and the horror of what this will mean if Israel continues to get away with it. It is understandable that many people within the Jewish community do believe that the anti-Semitic attack in Manchester was in part caused by the pro-Palestine protests. The reason they believe that is because the unelected leadership of the Jewish community and their newspapers, the Jewish Chronicle, for instance, claim that all the time. It's not because it's true. Unfortunately, a lot of people within the Jewish community have to realize they're being systematically lied to by people in power, by politicians and by journalists. Traditionally, Jewish people knew they were being systematically lied to because for centuries the establishment was anti-Semitic and came out with all sorts of nonsense, and Jewish people, being alienated from the rest of society, were able to see things more objectively. This is why some of the greatest thinkers in history have been Jewish, such as Karl Marx, Freud, Einstein and others, and we need to bring back that critical understanding back into Jewish communities as we had in the past.
We need to recognize that the unjust demonization of Israel spills over and contributes to an anti-Jewish tone in this country and also encourages extremism.
If the chief rabbi and other official leaders of the Jewish community wanted to significantly reduce anti-Semitism, they should make it very clear that Jewish people in Britain, on the whole, simply do not support the atrocities and massacres in Gaza. That wouldn't end anti-Semitism, I concede that, but it would significantly reduce it. The fact that the leaders of the official Jewish community don't even dream about saying such things, I think is very, very worrying. It does rather suggest that their main concern is to defend the Israeli government, not to defend and protect Jewish people.
That man there is not a Jew. That man there is an Ashkenazi Polish man. Where was Hitler from? Poland.
Government not to defend and protect Jewish people in this country.
Our Zionism is a statement of the centrality of Israel within Jewish faith. And on this, Yom Ha'atzmaut, we declare to the world, we are Zionists and we're proud of it.
The Jewish community has tied itself to supporting and defending Israel to such an extent that no matter how badly Israel behaves, we have to keep defending what is happening. And one of the reasons for this is, of course, because of the tragedy of Jewish history, which is in the 1940s, the Nazis tried to exterminate all Jews. And now we're in a world where a government that claims to represent Jewish people has actually committed international crimes again and again and again. So they go into a kind of denial that, well, it's impossible, we couldn't have committed any kind of crime. We're sort of beyond that. And of course they can then use the Holocaust and the appalling.
No, Hitler's so-called detention centres, the big warehouses that they're converting into detention centres, have big furnaces in them. It's been proven. Hitler's, did I say Hitler's? Trump, I mean. Ha! Mein Kampf. Unser Kampf der Freiheit.
Tragedy of what happened back in the 1940s to sort of say, well, you can't criticise us, we've suffered so much. But of course that's only some Jews. Many other people of Jewish background, including myself, are trying to get the Jewish community, if you like, out of that corner and distancing ourselves from what Israel is doing, because it's fundamentally not a Jewish project.
The data, there's too much of it.
That's okay. SAS builds models and makes decisions, so you don't have to freak out.
But we like freaking out.
We're getting so much done! From data to ta-da, SAS Via.
Fucking retard.
Welcome to Survivor 50, the greatest adventure on television.
Israel is fundamentally a Western colonial project that has gone from bad to worse, and it needs to be radically reformed, to say at least, in order to save not just the Palestinians and other Arabs and all the other victims of Israel's wars, but also to save the Jewish people in Israel and the Jewish community as a whole. There are two reactions any community can have to trauma and appalling horrors and tragedies that befall that community. One is to say that you never want that to happen to anyone else, and to go out of your way to stop it happening to anyone else because it was so tragic and so devastating. And that's the lesson I try to learn from my father's experience, that genocide has to be stopped and should never be, we shouldn't even go in the direction of genocide and war crimes under any circumstances. But there is another way of reacting to such horrors, and that is to say, well, because we suffered so terribly, nothing can compare to our suffering. And therefore you shouldn't have empathy for other people. And very tragically, that is the argument that is used in our media and by our politicians today, that because Jews suffered so terribly in World War II, somehow the Israeli state, which dishonestly claims to represent all Jews, should be allowed to do what it likes. That, to me, is a completely obscene thing to argue. It's an insult to the memory of the Holocaust, to in any way use the suffering of my father's family and the millions of others who suffered and the millions who died, to use that suffering to in any way excuse or justify further genocides is a complete misuse, an absolute tragic insult to the suffering of the Holocaust. In the first decades after World War II, the Holocaust was rarely discussed. It had been so traumatic and awful, people didn't want to discuss it generally in Western societies. In fact, the people who mostly discussed it were radical left-wing people who didn't want to forget the fact that the Nazis had particularly targeted socialists and communists, and of course within the Jewish community and other supporters of Israel.
Did you hear that?
Was an important
Did you just hear that?
culture,
He's right, you know. Everyone's all hopping up and down, oh, the commies. Takes a Nazi to know one. I say, I'm a democratic socialist. Not sorry. This so-called democracy that we have is not democracy at all. It's communist dictatorship. I don't like communism either, because it flows everything in the wrong direction. It flows everything to the benefit of government. Government's not meant to be there to be served. It is meant to be there as a service. The institution itself as a service to the people. People who work for government, it's an honour to serve the people. Not a means of a career to climb a ladder so that the people can feed your fucking filthy guts. Okay. By any means necessary, eh?
Holocaust wasn't much discussed. Now we have Holocaust museums, Holocaust memorials, Holocaust institutions, Holocaust Memorial Day. It's now a much, much bigger thing. It's taught in schools. And when this first happened, I was pleased. Many people who are from Holocaust survivor families were very pleased. What could possibly go wrong? They're teaching people about the terrible crimes the Nazis committed and will make it less likely that genocides and other crimes will be committed in the future. Unfortunately, I was very wrong to think that. We are now in a situation where the memorialisation of the Holocaust by governments and by politicians and by sections of the media is not to say this was a terrible thing and should never happen again to anyone. Rather, it is to say that this is a terrible thing that happened mostly to Jews, and therefore we should support Israel, and therefore we should never criticise Israel no matter what it does. And this has led to a situation where people are hesitant to criticise Israel in the way it is committing genocide in Gaza today. And that is an absolute obscenity and a complete misuse of the memory of the Holocaust. Genocide has to stop anywhere. Any genocide which is happening has to be opposed actively. There is never an excuse for genocide. My father was a teenager in a big industrial town in Poland, Łódź, in 1939. The Nazis invaded. Within a few months, him and his family had been forced into an area, a small area of Łódź, which then became the ghetto, where they were deprived of food, of clean water, of medical care. Within a year, my father's mother and his brother had died of disease. This has many similarities to what is happening in Gaza. The people of Gaza are pushed from one end to the other, deprived of housing, clean water, medical care, food, uncannily similar. My father survived by some miracle. He ended up in various concentration camps, including Buchenwald, and survived the death march at the end of the war with people dying all around him. And it's precisely because of that history that I've been very interested in anti-Semitism and understanding genocide and understanding how the Holocaust happened. And so I felt motivated to go on those demonstrations with a placard saying, this son of a Holocaust survivor says, stop the genocide in Gaza. When I first stood with that slogan, it was to some extent in the hope that they weren't going to go for a genocide. They weren't going to go and try and kill huge numbers or tens of thousands of Palestinians, and that having this slogan might possibly help oppose that dire situation. But of course, what we found out is it's been unimaginably worse than my worst and many people's worst nightmares. Whatever happens to Trump's peace plan, it looks like the people of Gaza are going to be left there to rot in hellish conditions, without shelter, without decent healthcare, without enough food, and probably still being bombed. In other words, in conditions, in some respects, quite similar to what my father survived in the Łódź ghetto. It's absolutely terrifying in this day and age that genocidal, Nazi-like policies are being implemented by a Western ally. And I and many other Holocaust survivor descendants, in fact in our group we have 2 actual Holocaust survivors, people who were alive as children in the Holocaust, who are devoted, absolutely determined to protest as much as they can in this country against this appalling genocide, against Britain's support for this genocide. And in particular, we go out to prove to everyone, as much as we possibly can, that these protests are not anti-Semitic. And we know they're not anti-Semitic because we are overwhelmed with love and support and praise and cheers and clapping and even songs. And several of us have spoken at these big rallies, and when our Holocaust survivor, my friend Stephen Kaposh and Agnes Corrie, when they speak, they are listened to by the protesters with respectful silence and huge cheers.
As someone who survived the darkest chapter of our shared history, I know what it means to be stripped of dignity, of land, of home. That is why I remain steadfast in my commitment to the Palestinian people.
Foreign wars and turmoil make energy more costly and less secure. By connecting new energy supply to our community,
I have not experienced one iota of anti-Semitism on any of the dozens of demonstrations I have been on, and you can speak to hundreds of other Jewish people who've been on these demonstrations who've also experienced not an iota of anti-Semitism. And this is why the right-wing media, politicians, have to invent lie after lie, story after story about how we are anti-Semitic.
On Saturday, we saw the most densely populated bunch of, I would argue, anti-Semitic pro-terror group supporting crackpots.
What has happened to students now that they're not only anti-Semitic, they celebrate their racism, they celebrate their Jew hatred.
We know what these marches are about. These people are the enemy. And I defended the right of these people to march for a very long time. I really did. It's been 2 years now. This is not about caring about babies in Gaza. Trust me, these people pretend they care about it, and they share the videos of children filmed by Hamas in great distress. This isn't about that. This is about them hating Jews.
It sickens me that politicians and journalists...
Geez, we've seen that chain before, haven't we, Governor General? There is footage of our Governor General wearing the same chain. There is footage of also a governor in the United States wearing the same chain, being questioned by Josh Hawley.
This isn't about that. This is about them hating Jews.
It sickens me that politicians and journalists have no shame and will use Jewish fears, Jewish suffering, misuse anti-Semitism in this way, weaponize it in this way, in order to desperately try to defend their disgusting policy of supporting Israel, of killing, I'll say it again, 200,000 people. It could be many more, but when you destroy people's homes, when you destroy healthcare, when you stop bringing food in, people die in even larger numbers than the media are talking about. It's absolutely terrible what is happening in Gaza, and it has to stop now. It is striking that the newspapers and other press outlets which most criticise the Palestinian movement for being racist, for being anti-Semitic, are the very same outlets that have been stirring up racism against Muslims, against other minorities for decades and decades. Indeed, the Daily Mail is well known for actively supporting Mosley's fascist movement, and yet these racist purveyors of newspaper lies have the cheek, the outrageous, I mean, it's just beyond anything, that they claim the moral high ground in criticising a movement, a Palestinian movement, which is staunchly anti-racist. To accuse us of being racist is obscene. The British media has always had its problems, but in recent years
been saying, there's more than what meets the eye. Decepticons. Not an idle statement.